Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rex Factor, the animated show. And here's your hosts, Graham Duke and Ali Hood.
Hello! And welcome to Rex Factor, where we are reviewing all the kings and queens of England. Now, let's see who's going to be facing our judgment this week. So it's Richard III.
Ooh.
Well, yes, now, Ali, most people watching, what do you think they'll be imagining when they hear the name Richard III?
Evil, hunchback, nasty piece of work, stabby, car park.
On the one hand, he's the ultimate villain. He's a cunning, murderous hunchback, as portrayed by Shakespeare. Crookback, foul, misshapen, stigmatic, elvish-marked, abortive, rooting hog, bottled spider, poisonous, bunch-backed toad.
Rooting hog toad. He is a baddie, though, isn't he? Everyone thinks of him as a baddie.
But not his own personal fan club, the Richard III Society.
Oh, yes.
They would argue that he's actually a good man who did good things but was the victim of Tudor propaganda. Was he the dreadful minister of hell? Or is he a lovely man who was just a victim of history?
Let's find out.
Biography.
So, Richard III was born on the 2nd of October, 1452, making him about 30 years old when he became king in 1483. Now, what about that hunchback that Shakespeare and many others would tell us about? He actually had a condition called scoliosis. So this is a curvature of the spine, but it's not actually a hunchback. However, he could have ridden a horse, and he could have held a sword and fought in battle. But it's a condition that still exists today. Indeed, the Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt actually has scoliosis.
No way.
Oh, unlike the 6'5" Usain Bolt, Richard III was only 5'8".
God, they were short in those days. Apologies to short people in the crowd.
Now, Richard was born at a time of turmoil in England during the Wars of the Roses.
Yeah.
But the House of York is ultimately victorious when his brother, Edward IV, becomes king in 1461. All seems fine. But when his brother briefly lost the throne in 1470, Richard fought bravely in 2 battles, Edward is restored as king, and then everything's fine.
Okay, good.
Now, if Richard had died in 1483, he would probably have been remembered as the epitome of a loyal, chivalric, brave, medieval knight.
Well done, Richard. He's a solid chap, then.
Except that it's not Richard who dies, but it's his brother, Edward IV. And he leaves behind him 2 young sons.
Oh, I can see this coming.
Edward names his brother Richard as Lord Protector to oversee the minority of his 12-year-old son, Edward V.
Yeah, who's like 9?
His 12-year-old son, Edward V. Unfortunately for Richard, this is when things start to turn controversial. Richard comes down to London, intercepts the young Edward V along the way, and sets him up in the Tower of London, where he's soon joined by his younger brother.
Oh, dear.
Richard starts to increase his power. He has one of his chief rivals at court executed, and he declares the marriage of Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville invalid, and therefore Edward V illegitimate.
A couple of scenes ago, it all looked fine, and suddenly something changed, something escalated in Richard's head.
Consequently, Richard is crowned Richard III, and the princes in the Tower are never seen again.
That is massive. He's killed the legal heir.
But there's more to come for Richard. He struggles to gain the loyalty of the nobles having taken the throne. Just to make matters worse, Henry Tudor, the exiled head of the House of Lancaster, invades, and Richard is defeated and killed in the Battle of Bosworth at the age of just 32. And Henry Tudor becomes Henry VII, and the Tudor dynasty has begun.
Oh, it's a dramatic finish, isn't it? What an end.
But that's not the end for Richard III. For many years, his body was thought to have been lost to history, but then in 2012, his bones are rediscovered beneath a car park in Leicester. Anyway, that is the life and reign of Richard III, but let's find out how he does when we review him.
Battleyness. Warrior.
So we've got a few good things for Richard. He's not a bad soldier. He fought bravely in the battles of Battleyness and Tewkesbury to help his brother regain the throne in 1471, despite being only 18 at the time.
Okay.
In Scotland, he led an English army into Edinburgh in 1482 and secured the town of Berwick. So it's thanks to Richard III that it's still English to this day.
Oh, well, there you go, people from Berwick.
Then, of course, there's the Battle of Bosworth. Now, you might think it's an odd one to bring up, given that he lost.
Yeah.
But he actually does pretty well for the most part. Even Tudor propaganda concede that Richard fought bravely in the battle. They had this incredible heroic charge where he tries to kill Henry Tudor. He killed his standard bearer and he probably got within just a few feet of the king himself.
Gosh, that's dramatic, isn't it? That's what you hope in Rex Factor, that not only is it a king winning a battle charging in, but king facing king and seeing who's the winner. In this case, not him.
Contrary to what Shakespeare says.
I've got it.
Around. Yeah.
My horse, a kingdom. My kingdom for my horse? No, a kingdom for my horse. No, a kingdom for a horse. My kingdom for a horse. Got it in one.
Actually, he refuses a horse, preferring instead to fight, either for death or glory.
That's completely the opposite impression.
He goes down fighting, and indeed, he's the last English king to die in battle, and the first since 1066.
Rex Fact.
Win.
On the other hand, there are elements in which he didn't do so well.
Right.
Despite his bravery, there's no getting around the fact that he does actually lose the Battle of Bosworth.
Very true.
He brings to an end the Plantagenet dynasty, which
they're my faves.
had lasted over 300 years. To make matters worse, he's defeated by Henry Tudor, who has a very slim claim to the throne and is not exactly a military genius. What are you thinking, Ali? We each score this out of 10, so how many points do you think Richard III deserves?
Well, I like it. He did do that heroic charge, which is, remember, Rex Factor is about holding that sword aloft. He misses, but it is a battle that we will remember forever. 6.
I think that's a fair score. If he'd done it, if he got to Henry and killed him, we'd be looking at a massive score. I'll also give him a 6 out of 10, which gives him a total score of 12 for Battleyness.
All of this with a bad back.
Exactly.
I've done my back and I'm hopeless.
Scandal. Sinner.
Well, there's plenty to go on here.
Oh my word, yes.
Firstly, he usurps the throne from his own nephew.
3 points.
He acts with suspicious decisiveness throughout, perhaps implying that he had planned from the off to take the throne.
It was something that happened when he came to London. He tasted power and thought, I'm having that.
Surrounds himself with a massive military retinue, install all his northern supporters in positions of power. He also has a bit of marital strife. He was accused of poisoning his own wife in order to marry his 18-year-old niece, Elizabeth of York.
Oh my golly galoshes.
Of course, he needed an heir, put the two of them together.
Perfect.
Kill your wife, marry your niece.
Yeah, I mean, it would make him for a very legitimate heir, but perhaps one that isn't quite so fit to rule.
Indeed. Now, he's been accused of so many murders, it would take too long to go through all of them. But the most notorious must be his own nephews, the princes in the Tower.
That's pretty stabby.
He does lock him and his brother up in the Tower of London, and they're never seen again. Lots of contemporaries believe Richard is responsible, and a man called James Tyrrell later confessed to killing them on Richard's orders.
Well, that sounds pretty conclusive. Lock him up.
Saint.
In his defence, it's easy to paint him as the ultimate bad guy, but the list of his misdemeanours is kind of comically large. You have to smell a bit of a Tudory rat to think maybe they're just making it up.
Well, come on, let's hear it. I mean, you'd be a bit like OJ's lawyer here, but let's hear why he might not have done it.
A lot of the rumours about Richard's murders are almost certainly false, and many are pure inventions of Shakespeare. His wife probably died of tuberculosis.
Oh.
Actually, it may have been a genuine love match.
Oh, that's sweet. Still a shame he didn't kill her.
And the fate of the princes in the Tower is still a mystery. Tyrrell only confessed to the murder when being tortured by Henry VII.
Okay. Right, well, that does sound very dodgy.
And many people think that if the princes were alive, Henry VII himself would then be the prime suspect for killing them. There is a case for the defence of Richard, but there's still quite a lot of blood on his hands.
They were never seen again after he shut the door and went, all right, night-night, sweet dreams, Uncle Richard's going off to battle now.
Yeah.
Even if he didn't kill the princes in the Tower, even if he only did half of those murders, I mean, even a suggestion of incest there.
And he did actually have to issue a public denial that A, he didn't kill his wife, and B, he wasn't going to marry his niece.
And C, I didn't kill my nephews. Yeah, I mean, it's massive. I mean, we're still talking about it today. It's massive. It's a big 10.
I agree. It's this is as scandalous as it gets. It's scandal for the ages. It's a 10 out of 10. It's 20 for scandal.
Subjectivity. Saint.
Now, he wasn't always this dark and sullen character. His court had lots of pageantry and ceremony. He was a patron of music and the arts, as well as undertaking extensive building works.
Yeah, he's only got 2 years as well.
He introduces the court of requests so that ordinary people who are too poor to pay for legal representation could still have their cases heard.
That's brilliant.
And even the hostile Tudor chroniclers admit that he made good laws.
So the extrajudicial killing of his relatives was I mean, out of character.
He was also a little bit of a northerner. He presided over the Council of the North, which introduced significant improvements to governance, economy and justice in a usually unstable region. Indeed, he's so popular that the York Civic Records on his death lamented that Richard was piteously slain to the great heaviness of this city.
Cool, that's quite risky in the age of a new king. So northerners think he's all right.
Would you really wanted to be the subject of Richard III?
There's a bit too much war going on for me to relax fully.
He undoes all the good work of Edward IV, brings back war and rebellion and murder, etc. He's unpopular. Londoners are very suspicious of the fact that he likes people from the north and don't like it when he brings them down to London. And he's unable to win over the nobility. Ultimately, he's unsuccessful.
Yeah.
It's a short reign. He gets overthrown by someone with a very limited claim to the throne.
Yeah, he's not getting a massive score. I'm still going over 5. I'm going to give him 6 because in 2 short years, there's still things that we appreciate from him today.
I think that's probably fair. I'm going to go slightly lower with a 5.5.
All right.
Ultimately, Richard does bring it back into chaos, and he's not successful. 2 years as king, he's overthrown. It's not quite good enough for me.
Bad luck.
So that's 11.5 for subjectivity.
Longevity.
So, Richard III was king from the 26th of June 1483 to the 22nd of August 1485, which is a reign of 2.17 years. In fact, if you put all the monarchs of England together, that leaves him in 52nd place.
Out of
56.
It's not very good, Richard, I'm afraid.
Dynasty. Not the programme.
Sadly, his only son and heir died. Richard does not have any legitimate surviving children when he died.
I mean, thank goodness it'd be another war, wouldn't it?
Well, indeed. Which means that he gets a score of 0 for Dynasty. However, ultimately, the scores only tell us part of the story. Does Richard III have that certain something, that lasting legacy, that star quality that we call
Rex Factor. Your hosts, Graham Duke and Ali Hood.
So, Ali, there he is, Richard III, and there is the coveted Rex Factor crown. Does he deserve to wear it?
Well, I have to say, Richard, looking rather good. I've never suspected you to be a champion of justice. I think you need to have a serious word with Shakespeare. There's all that good stuff in the north. And also his battliness. I mean, from someone who's ultimately lost the battle, I was surprised.
And he is perhaps number 1 when it comes to posthumous celebrity.
Yeah,
He hasn't been out of the papers for the last 5 years.
No, his reconstructed face is everywhere. And he won't be the last person to have their face reconstructed from Leicester City car park.
But don't be too quick to put that Rex Factor crown on Richard III. He disturbs the stability England had enjoyed under his brother, he fails to get the support of his nobles, and ultimately he does lose the crown in battle to a lowly Welshman, ending the Plantagenet dynasty.
So, has Richard III got what it takes to wear the coveted Rex Factor crown? It's time to decide.
Oh, it's really tough. We need to let people know what a champion for justice he was. Change everyone's opinion.
And he's not short of love and support in this day and age.
I just don't know. Give me a clue, Graham. What should I do? What should I do?
It's tricky.
Okay, I think I'm there. I've made my judgment. It is... No, Richard, I can't give it to you.
It's also a no from me. Richard III does not have the Rex Factor. A lot of promise, but as Ali said, you lose that big battle at the end. It's not a great legacy.
But I will say, it's a lot better than Shakespeare tells it.
So that is it. Richard III does not have the Rex Factor, but tune in next time to see if another monarch will get the Rex Factor.